Hi, I was just looking out the window, mesmerized by the falling snow, thinking about the watch hobby and the different types of collecting strategies I've used over the past 2 years, and what strategies other people may use. Then I went down a rabbit hole. Join me on this episode of Adventures with Time as I ponder some odd, unconventional, and maybe whimsical collecting strategies. Welcome to another episode of Adventures with Time. I'm your host, Bob, and on this channel, I talk about my experiences in the watch hobby. If that interests you, please subscribe and ring that bell icon so that you're alerted whenever I upload a new video. And if you like pictures of watches, follow me on Instagram. On this episode, something a bit different, I think, and maybe a little humor mixed in. I've been collecting watches for over 2 years now and still consider myself a beginner. When I started out, I had a strategy for my collection, which was to obtain watches with different complications, different types of watches, and watches manufactured or assembled in different countries. I believe that strategy quickly faded, but not totally. It evolved, or maybe deteriorated, into simply buying different watches which seemed interesting to me. Yes, I still sought out different complications and different types of watches, but I wasn't so driven by checking a number of boxes on a list. I just wanted to try different watches which appealed to me, sometimes succeeding and sometimes failing. You can see what my collection has evolved into over the past 2 years by watching my recent video on the State of My Watch Collection 2019. In that video, I not only review my holdings, but also the watches I've sold over the past year, and watches I'm considering selling this year. I'll leave a link to that episode up here on the screen. And if you want to get a quick peek, a really quick peek of my collection, stay tuned to the end of this video. When thinking about this evolution of mine, I started to ponder different collecting strategies used by some collectors that I know. My thoughts then moved on to some potential collecting strategies that collectors could adopt. This degraded into thinking about outlandish and unconventional strategies for watches. So here are 10 unconventional strategies for watch collecting. Number 1. Watches that have been worn in movies or TV shows, or by celebrities, world leaders, or even gangsters. Perhaps this strategy is to collect a watch worn by each of the past presidents. Another, which I know some collectors use, is wearing the watches worn by James Bond in his movies. What about watches worn by each of the regular hosts on The Tonight Show? Like Jay Leno's Jaeger-LeCoultre. There are many cohorts that one could select out of this strategy. Number 2, different shaped watches. Watches come in different shapes, usually round or square or rectangle. There are also bullhead watches, as my Stratton Ligera, octagonal watches, and whatever shape that Hamilton Ventura is, worn by Elvis Presley. I bet there are some even more stranger shapes for watches. Number 3, how about the extremes? The thinnest watch, the thickest, the widest, the narrowest. In this area, one can point to the Jaeger-LeCoultre Caliber 101, first produced in 1929, which is thought to be one of the smallest movements and therefore fit into one of the smallest watches ever made. 4, watches assembled in different countries. This is one of the guiding principles I originally adopted when I started collecting. And I've been able to get some watches from China, Russia, and Australia. But what about countries like India? Are there any watches made in South America or in any of the African countries? Number 5, different types of movements. Well, we know there are manual, automatic, quartz, spring-drive movements, such as with Grand Seiko, and hybrid quartz and mechanical. I'm sure there may be some other weird, interesting movements. Does anyone know about other types of movements? Let us know. Number 6, watches made from different materials. Most watches are either stainless steel or a precious metal like gold. But we know there are watches made out of plastic, titanium. I even tried on the Speedmaster made entirely from ceramic. That was a cool watch. I have a watch partially made from wood. There are lots of other materials used for watching, and this strategy could be an interesting one. Number 7, different complications. Another guiding principle for my original collecting strategy. We all probably have a day and or a day-date complication. Perhaps even a full day, date, month, and year complication. What about moon phases? Or minute repeaters? Or alarms? And then there's different combinations or permutations of these complications. Or watches with the least amount of hands. Obviously that would be a single hand watch. Or the other extreme, watches with many hands. I saw the Omega Dark Side of the Moon, which had 7 hands. I'm sure there are specialty watches with even more hands, like the Frank Muller Eternitas. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Number 8, numerals used on dials. Watches usually have either plain, unlabeled hour indices, or they use Arabic or Roman numerals. Some watches have no numerals, and some don't even have indices. I saw a Patek Philippe watch, actually it was a pocket watch, that used Hebrew numbers at the National Watch and Clock Museum in Columbia, PA. Worth a trip if you haven't been there. Number 9, watches from defunct manufacturers. I recently posted a video about the Weiler Watch Company and one of their watches. Now it can be argued that Weiler is a company that no longer exists, at least not in its original form. I'm sure there are many other watch companies that no longer exist, which could form the basis of a collecting strategy. And finally, 10, watches from a specific time period. This could be the epitome of specialization. One person I knew from my last job only collected watches of a certain time period from a certain manufacturer. For example, Rolex watches from the 1970s, such as my 1975 Oyster Perpetual, or some other time frame that has meaning to the collector. Maybe your birth year, or maybe the year your parents were married, or some other sentimental time period. Okay, let's hear from you guys as to your quirky or odd collecting strategies. I'm sure there are some doozies out there that are great fun and represent some tough challenges. So fess up. Please let us know about your strategies or ones you've heard of that other collectors use in the comments below. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Oh, it's still snowing out. What are we gonna do? Hey, you guys want to see my watch collection?